Hello and welcome back to my office. This is part 2 of phase 2 of my office renovation. So if you did not watch the first video, you don't have to, it's fine. But I added some trim to these shelves behind me here because they looked unfinished. They're handmade, they're not IKEA or anything. I don't know how long they've been here, but they were here pre-2014 when the house was abandoned, because I have photos of this room abandoned. So I added trim, made it look so much better. Phase 2 is painting the ceiling and adding crown molding. So that is where we're at today. That is what we're going to be talking about, and maybe some other things. Who knows what will come up. Let me show you what I've done so far, which is paint the ceiling. I know you are probably thinking, Kayla, what are you doing? That ceiling color is almost identical to what it already was. And I agree. And that's basically the point. I really liked the ceiling color that was in here. I think that I chose a pretty solid ceiling color for the very first can of paint that I chose for this house. It's just that I feel that it needed to be a little bit moodier. I'm finding that when picking things for this house, I'm drawn to like jewel tones. Basically, I wanted what was already up there, but like something more fitting for the vibe that I wanted for this room. And I think I got it. Side note here, I'm so sorry if my fireplace is loud. Professor and I are freezing, so we're enjoying a little fire while we work. Ceiling is painted and I'm so happy with the color. I will tell you what, that medallion took so long to paint. I did not paint it when I first redid the room because I thought that I wanted it to like stand out and shine on its own. And I'm not gonna say that I regret that because for 3 years, that's how I enjoyed it. I really liked it. And then when I decided to paint this ceiling again, I just felt like, I think it should all match. I think it should all flow. I think that all molding elements should match. I love the way that it looks right now, but oh my gosh, that was such a pain. I'm never painting it again. We have a couple medallions throughout the house, but the only other one that I have painted is the one for the half bath. And what really worked out about that is that I was able to spray paint it black and then just touch it up with the ceiling paint color. So it does match the ceiling because that ceiling isn't like a pure black, but just like being able to get into all of the crevices with black spray paint makes like a world of difference. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you ever hang a medallion, is spray paint it a pretty close color if you're not already spraying the ceiling. And that at least gives you like all of your white covered so that you don't have to just spend forever up there just like dabbing paint. It was so tiring. I woke up and my arms were like, ugh. But I'm glad it's done. I'm obsessed with it. So today I got out my camera to film and I just figured I would do that intro and show you the paint color. And now we will get started on working. I told you that I have crown, and this is the same crown that I used in my planned room upstairs. Like it's fine. It's pretty. I will absolutely admit that if I were rich, I would choose something 1,000 times bigger, more gaudy. Like there's like crown molding with like designs in it that are like roses and you know, that sort of thing. I can't afford that, okay? Maybe in like 20 years when everything is done and been done, I can like work on replacing things with like the crazy things that I actually want. But for now, a simple crown molding is better than no crown molding. So that is what we're doing. But when I was looking into hanging crown molding and what I do in like certain instances, like molding has all sorts of rules, okay? And I'm a firm believer in doing whatever you want to do, but I wanted to do a little bit of research on what I should do in a certain circumstance, which is over here where my my like brick fireplace is. I didn't know like what I should do there. Anyway, I figured that out, and I ended up coming across this website where this guy was like, you should not be doing single piece crown moldings. You need to be doing 3-piece crown moldings. And I was like, what does that mean? So I fell down a rabbit hole of this guy's website. I'll link that below because it was super informative and it made so much sense and it looked so good. And it was a pretty cheap way to really beef up my crown molding without spending too much more. Needless to say, I was convinced I had to do a 3-piece crown molding. I didn't know what that was a week ago, but now this room needs it. It has to have it. Basically, a 3-piece crown molding is this piece of crown And then on top it gets another piece and the bottom gets another piece. The top is what goes on the ceiling and the bottom is what goes on the wall. So I went down to my basement. I was looking through all of the scraps of molding that my dad and I had made over the last 3 years of being here. And I found 2 pieces that I was like, okay, this is awesome. So I built a little model of what it could look like. And then yesterday my dad came over and we started making all of that. So that is all made. Yeah, so let me show you that. The top piece is just a 1x4 that we routed the edge and so that it has a nice rounded look, and that is going to be what is on the ceiling. This bottom piece here is a 2x4 that has just been ripped and ripped and ripped and ripped. I think we got 4 or 5 pieces of this per 2x4. This is the same trim that we actually use like around our floorboards that closes any gaps from the molding. The only difference between this and what I use on my floor is that this is a tiny bit taller, so that way I have lots of room to staple the crown into. So that gets hung on the wall. Does this make sense without a model? We will build one in a little bit here. We got all of that made yesterday and I painted it last night and I did another coat this morning. I'm going to wait on my dad to hang all of that. It's just a lot of lifting above my head and it would be very helpful to have another person. This room is 15 by 15, so these are long boards and it would not be very fun to hang this by myself. But what we can get into today, because I changed the crown molding size, is that the board that is above my bookshelf that I added that the crown would sit on, it is no longer long enough. So what I did was I ripped a piece of wood to 1 3/4 inches, and what I'm gonna do is just 2-piece that. I'm gonna add that underneath what is already existing. And you might be thinking, Kayla, but the seam, that seems lazy. The thing is that the crown covers the seam, so it works out perfectly. It's easy enough because it's light. I won't need a hand with that. But what I will need to do is cut the trim that I hung up last week. So it's kind of a pain in my butt and it's a step backwards, but I feel like it's for a good reason because I really think that this 3-piece crown molding is going to be so pretty and look so good. It's worth the little hassle that I have to get up here and cut this and add more and blah. So let's get to work. This is the little piece that I'm going to add onto the bottom of the top of the shelf that comes down from the ceiling that the crown molding will sit on top of. There's actually 2 reasons I'm excited about this, other than the fact that the crown will be bigger. One is that it will make that top shelf look a little bit less tall, which I mentioned in the last video. I was like, I'm not quite sure on it yet. I am sure on it now because this is so nice for storage, and I think that it's such an improvement that from what it was that, like, I don't know, I refuse to believe that those are too tall. But by adding this piece here, it's going to make them appear a tiny bit shorter. So it really, really works out. Second is that the board that I added up there originally had a square edge on it, just the like edge that's on a piece of wood that you've ripped down. And when I'm like looking at it, immediately I knew like, there's just something wrong with it. It gives that unfinished look. It gives that, hey, I hung up a piece of wood and called it a day. And that was the whole point of this project, was to fix that sort of look. I don't want it to look like just a piece of wood. And I wasn't feeling like another piece of trim on top of that would solve that problem. That was just gonna get too like bulky, and then like where does that sit underneath the crown? Like, so my fix for that is that the new board that goes underneath has a rounded edge. I don't know how well you can see this here, but it's just rounded. It's just a nice gentle curve that gives it something that looks more finished, in my opinion. I think it looks like somebody did something more than just slap a piece of wood up. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go up there and I'm going to hold this scrap piece up and just mark on the new trim where I will need to cut it, because like I said, I have to cut some of that nice fancy new trim that I made away so that this can just kind of slip into place. I just realized that this is going to be really annoying. It's not going to be really annoying. It's just that, so I have to cut away that much, and the nail is right there at the top, so I'm going to have to re-nail it. It's a whole thing. Anyway, gonna use my weasel saw here. Let's do this. Need to go get something to pry with. First piece out, Now let's see if this fits. Okay, that's literally perfect. That was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. I was actually really dreading this. And I just kept having to remind myself that if I did the one-piece crown, which fits on this, that I would have just been mad immediately, because three-piece crown is gonna be so pretty. It's gonna be so big. It's gonna be so chunky. So there we go. Now I just need to repeat this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more times. No big deal. Hopefully they all go as easy as that. So these are my 3 elements of the crown molding. This is the bottom, the crown of course, and then the top. I'm gonna staple these together and then show you what that looks like. One thing I learned is that the more decorative part of crown is the bottom, that part that goes on the wall. So I'm gonna add this. Here's my crown mock-up. This is what it looks like from the side. So this part goes on the ceiling, this goes on the wall, and this is the whole shebang. See, I really like this so much more than just this little thing. This is so much bigger and chunkier and just Okay, end of my workday today. I got the second piece on the top of the bookshelf. That took longer than expected. I take that back. It didn't take longer than expected. It's just a lot of up and down on the horse to just cut off half a saw blade's worth to make sure that it's super flush. That's a lot on your knees, and it was just too easy to sit down and look at my phone and enjoy the fire and pet the cat. It took longer than it should have. It's done now, so I'll be back shortly to hang crown molding. Hi! So, crown molding is done, and oh my gosh, I'm so happy about how it turned out. I know I feel like that's like what I always say about a project is, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about how it turned out. But you guys, this crown molding is better than expected. My dad came over on Monday and we hung up the 3-piece crown molding shebang. It looks so cool. We started by hanging the top piece on the ceiling. I don't know if this was on purpose, at least it wasn't on purpose on my end, it might have been on his. That we had cut it at the perfect width so that it could just be pushed up against the wall instead of having some sort of like spacer block to figure out exactly where it needed to go. Then we hung the crown itself and the baby piece on the bottom together, not at the same time, but like in the same go around the room. When I was browsing crown molding, I saw that there were these decorative corner pieces. You already know I'm all about the extra when it comes to this because I already added 2 pieces to my crown design. But the corner blocks also came in handy because there was no need for tricky cuts when it came to corners. Crown molding corners are, they're something special. Because the crown sits funny, it's not like a regular 45. Be very careful what you're cutting. I feel like sometimes 45-degree angles can already like throw me through a loop which way I should be cutting things. But crown is something totally special when it comes to that department. So anything that can reduce the number of corners that we had to cut was awesome in my book. They might steal the show for me. I think they look so awesome. I didn't get this on film because it would have been embarrassing, but we did struggle with one corner, which is the one outside corner that we had on the bookshelf. We even went to Home Depot and got a crown molding jig so that it holds it at like a perfect angle so that you get your angles right. But the saw blade coming down on it was pushing the crown out so the angles weren't what they should have been. It was a mess, and it was the last cut. That was all we needed to do to finish the room, was to get this done. and we struggled so hard and we were both getting so frustrated. But in the end, it worked out. It's not the most perfect corner. I will not show you a close-up of it because it's not the best. But you know what? We tried our hardest, and these ceilings are 10 foot tall. Nobody's up there, you know, peeking and spying and seeing. I think from down here you can't even tell that it's not 100% perfect. Let me show you what it looks like. I am so excited. So I have this really annoying habit, this like thing that happens is sometimes when I finish a project, I like look at it and I feel like I can't even be that excited about it because it just feels like it was always supposed to look that way. Honestly, when we got our countertops in our kitchen, which was something that was 3 years in the making, 3 years of no counters to these countertops, it felt like, yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And that's kind of how I feel about this crown molding. Oh yeah, this is just what it should have looked like. It doesn't even feel like I did anything cool or monumental or, you know, whatever. It just feels like, oh no, that's what it's supposed to look like. Something I thought was really funny about my new ceiling color is that I was looking at photos of when we bought the house, and this new ceiling color is basically the same color that the shelves were when we bought the house. And at the time, when I first saw this room, I was just like, oh, that paint color, it's gotta go, it's so drab. But now I'm really leaning into those colors that I felt were drab. To be fair, I think that color needed another coat or two. Like that was something that was wrong with it. And I do think the bookshelves look really good white. I want them to be white because I want everything else to really stand out. It was a pain in the butt color that took 3.5 coats to get that like real good coverage. Don't ever talk to me about painting a medallion again. It was so bad. It was such a pain in my butt. Even now, like if I look up and I stare at it, I can see little spots. And it's so hard because this desk here to reach. I don't know, it's just a pain in the butt. Don't talk to me about it. So yeah, I just think it's really funny that I brought that color back in when I initially did not love it. I think the colors in this room now are more what I envisioned for the house. Just this like, the moody colors, the jewel tones. I really love dark colors in this house, and I think this ceiling is exactly what it was meant to be. It's the more grown-up version of what I did originally. It's the realized version of what I did originally. So yeah, a month ago, this project was just a glimmer in my eye. I had been like sitting at my desk and looking this way at the bookshelf over here and just wondering like, oh, what can I do to make this better? Like this house is so amazing and this room is already so cool and so grand, but it's just missing something. And I think that adding that trim on the shelves, which if you have not watched the last video of this, the part 1 of phase 2, then go watch that because I'm excited about it. That is all. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you next time. P.S. Merry Christmas.